welcome to the Sunday League podcast, brought to you as part of our UK NFL Fantasy Football Network. I'm Samit Paul, and as always, I'm joined by TSL's co-host, co-creator, and co-commish, Jack Cowling. Jack, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, all good, all good. All the drafts are underway, so that's exciting. The notifications, obviously, we're sort of silent participants in all the leagues and things, so the notifications are going through the roof, but really cool to see what everyone's up to in those, and obviously the chat and things, which is great. So all good, mate.
Good stuff. So in today's pod, we will conclude our top 15 rankings list for the upcoming fantasy season. We've covered the running backs, the wide receivers, and the tight ends already. So this time round, it is the quarterbacks that we'll be looking at. We'll also continue to analyse and assess the first rounds of our TSL drafts, with all 5 leagues now drafting and teams well on their way to building their rosters. And we'll also cover all the notable news from the past week and what it means for fantasy football. So starting off with draft analysis, Jack, the last time we spoke, a few rounds into your draft in the South, just as a sort of update on how that has played out for you personally. Are you happy with your roster, how it's shaping up? And just looking at some of your rivals, are there any opposing teams that have caught your eye that are constructing strong rosters that are potential threats? I feel like it could be quite harsh to single teams out that might look a little bit weak, so we may steer clear of that conversation. Unless you want to call people out for being bad, but I don't know.
We're not going to go for our boy Dilesh. We're not going to go for him. No, it's it's good. I was really happy with how it was going. I was even getting some praise in the group, which caught me by surprise a little bit, because I moved up to get Olave. I can't remember exactly where we got to on the last time, but it was all happy. But then I got myself into a right pickle with my running backs, if I'm honest. Sort of got Achane with my second overall pick, which I was really happy with. And then, just the way it fell, there was wide receivers that I really wanted to get, or that sort of fell or became available. But I traded up to get Olave, which then sort of skipped me out around. And there was still quite a lot on the board at that point. You know, I was sort of looking at DeAndre Swift, which again we mentioned sort of last week, not the most exciting, but should be a pretty reliable scorer. Quinshon Judkins, Kyron Williams, Henderson. There's plenty of names sort of still there. So I was like, which one am I going to take? And then, as always happens, there's a bit of a run, and all of a sudden you're sort of staring down the barrel a little bit. So end up with Bashal Tutin, who a lot of people are a lot higher on him than me. I think his role should be quite significant, which should play into my hands a little bit. But just, I don't know. He's maybe dampened my spirits a little bit. I did sort of compliment him with a David Montgomery pickup in the 8th round. I think I got Montgomery, which again should give me a fairly reliable starter. But again, with Woody Marks there, I'm not too sure exactly how that's going to play out. So personally speaking, I'm happy. Got another Dolphin in there with Malik Willis as my quarterback too. So I was pretty happy with that. And now just starting to sort of, we're at that stage of the draft where you can start sort of picking up the names that you like the most and sort of slightly interested and maybe sort of curveball sort of selection stuff. So everybody's looking quite good. You know, we've been sort of plodding along quite nicely in the South. I think we've had a good 4 or 5 days now without any trades going on. So people are obviously just sort of bolstering the roster as they sort of see fit, really. So there's loads of teams out there, to be fair, that you look on paper and they look really strong. I think Katie in our league, I've really liked what she's been up to. She was quite late to the quarterback selection, which again, because we're doing the super flex, quarterbacks obviously flew off. She sort of took a different approach, and it has got her certainly the top end. You know, she was Bijan Robinson, Brock Bowers, Igbuka, AJ Brown, Quinshon Judkins, which I really liked as sort of a top 5 sort of selections, and she's sort of supplementing it now, and she has ended up with CJ Stroud and Stafford, who maybe not the highest ceiling long-term quarterback, obviously in Stafford, but he should score really well again this year. And CJ Stroud could be a big bounce back. So really like what she's done. I'm next to her, so she does keep picking people just before I want to, which is a little bit annoying. But no, I think most people will be pretty content and happy with how it's going. So interesting now. See how it plays out. And there's definitely a few names I've got on my board that I really want to get with the next couple of picks. So just praying that none of them get sniped off me.
Yeah, I'm looking at yours now, and I think it's a well constructed team. Got neighbours in there, so I'm obviously a massive fan of that move. Likewise to you, I've got Montgomery in the 8th as well to sort of shore my running back room up. So that's a sound move, hopefully, for both of us. Yeah. But I agree with you. Katie's team does look dangerous, got a good balance to it, with pieces sort of make her immediate contender, long-term studs as well. Dilesh is on a mad one. He really is the Antonio Conte of your league, as he looks like he's all in right now. So expect him to be a contender in the short term.
Who did he take? He got like Henry, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Mark Andrew. It was like the best team in the world 5 years ago. So, but we know Adelash, he likes to win. So he's going for it this year, get his money. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be some rebuilding job on his own if he sticks around. But yeah, CFC Bills teams looks dangerous as well. Seems like it's been a decent place. So the whole league, you're right, it looks pretty competitive. So
yeah,
good luck to you all in the south. Okay, so switching to the Midlands, which is the one I'm competing in. From a personal perspective to start, I think I'm pretty happy with how it's gone so far. Is it the ideal roster that I had in mind before the draft started? No, but I guess how many people actually walk away from a draft thinking that, oh yeah, I was absolutely on the money with every single pick all the way through. So you're bound to get some certain picks that you're not happy with. Similarly to you, a couple of times my top target got taken either the pick or 2 picks before me, so I had to pivot. But
any in particular, any sort of particular pain points or sort of any names you missed out on, oppositions that you...
The ones that hurt, I think Genty I wanted my first running back, but he got taken the pick before me, so I had to go to Love, which isn't obviously terrible, but yeah, Genty was one that I was eyeing.
You wanted Tucker Craft, didn't you? I think it was your tight end that you really wanted.
Exactly. We were sitting there watching the boards, and it looked like it was going my way, and then right before me, he's gone. So great. Yeah. I'm happy with Laporta. I think he's more of a sure thing as well at the moment. Just steady presence in my team. But yeah, just one other one that came to mind just now is Purdy. I think I was keen to grab him, and then I had to go for Mendoza. So that was a bit of a left turn for me. But yeah, it's
Mendoza's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we don't know, and obviously he's not potentially going to start and things like that. But longer term, again, he could be a top 5 sort of scorer for years to come. So that could work out sort of in your favour. But it's just that thing where, like you said, you get a name in your head, or sort of even sometimes it's just a player from a certain team or whatever it may be, and it always just stings a little bit where you're like, who am I falling back on?
So yeah, like I said, I think just from our conversations prior to the draft as well, I think the big thing for me, and I'd like to get your opinion on this as well, is just that beyond the obvious of actually just competing and trying to win the league, because that's what we're all here for, I think the big factor for me was that I just wanted a team that I liked. I wanted players that I was rooting for. Just makes it more enjoyable for me. So like if I see Neighbours or T-Mac haul in a length of the field touchdown, then I'm just going to be jumping all around the living room on a Sunday evening watching Red Zone.
Yeah.
Compared to like if a JSN does it, for example, that's just a name plucking out of the air. But so every player I've picked, I've kind of just been intrigued by and I'm backing them. But like I say, I've obviously got a bit of a long-term strategy with the way things have played out for me. I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on it though, in terms of the balance, because that came up in a couple of pods that I was listening to, is you don't want to get stuck in sort of the middle ground as such, but then you don't want to be too win now, because then you've got a rebuild on your hands. You don't want to be looking too far in the future, because then when are you ever actually going to contend? So is there some sort of a sweet spot in there for you that you've got that sort of the balance of the both and the best of worlds, or not?
Yeah, like you said, it is difficult. I completely agree that you've got to have players that you like watching, or certainly on teams that you like watching. I know that you flagged a couple questions to me in terms of maybe selections, and I think I came back to you with sort of Prescott or sort of Jake Ferguson and people like that. And obviously being Cowboys, you were like, no, hell no, I'm not going for any Cowboys or Eagles or anything like that. So yeah, I'm glad you sort of stuck to that. It is tricky, there's so much talent, certainly in this first 5-6 rounds. I think you're getting elite level players and such that should put you in some level of contention, unless you're going for a mad one and just complete going for rookies straight off the bat or whatever. So I think you've got a chance, and where the winners will generally come from, especially in relatively deep leagues, because the waiver wire is not so active and stuff. Obviously trades will always be there, but it's going to come in this next group, from sort of round 6 to 16. That's where you're getting your depth from. That's where you might find some hidden gems, or maybe you go a little bit earlier on a player you see with an upside and things like that. So yeah, it is tricky, but like you said, I don't think nobody is doing a startup draft to tank. I can't imagine. I imagine everybody is sort of drafted to win year one, but you're trying to do it maybe not with the Dilesh method of sort of just going for 35-year-olds. You're trying to get those people that are either coming into their prime or maybe moved into a new situation that should elevate them and things like that. But yeah, winning year one in theory, should, is the goal for everybody, isn't it? So it's I think we're in the sort of crucial rounds now for a lot of the leagues, where it is that sort of round 6 to 16 where you've got to really try and show your worth.
I've likened myself to the San Antonio Spurs of our fantasy network.
Okay.
I just feel as I've given myself that nickname, which is quite weird. But yeah, just the way that I've constructed the roster, I think I'm going to struggle year one just because of the rookies and settling into the league and whatnot. But hopefully, a year in, I think every player that I've selected will be in a better position. But time will only tell, of course. Lots can change in the league.
Have you made any? You haven't made any trades or anything? You haven't moved across the board at all, have you? You've sort of stayed pat.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times where I've considered it, putting my own picks on the board on the trade block, or just sort of exploring trades. But I think there were just players that I wanted at that position at those certain times, and it was just like I'd rather just go for the guy that's on the board that I want than sort of play around with trades at the moment. But
yeah, sort of safety, because I definitely find that's the trickiest thing. I've made a few moves. As I said, I moved up to get Olave and such, and it does come back to you've got to give something away. So it does come back to bite you, and then you're like I said with my running back and such. And me and Matt that guessed with us a few weeks ago, he wanted to move up for a player, offered a trade. I countered, and he laughed it off. And I find it quite difficult to know the value, because again, in my mind, if someone's moving up, they really want someone. So it's tried to well, how much can I get out of them? And again, we've mentioned him quite a lot on this, but Dilesh, he's another Tottenham fan, and he's thrown me a few trades. And again, they haven't really appealed to me, but then I gave him one back and he just said no out of spite, he said. So I felt he kind of levied me. So he was just like, no, I just don't want to let you win a trade sort of thing. So it is that difficult. But in the Midlands one, I thought that, there's been a few people, Jay Bento, Kev H and Go Johnny Go have all been nice and active, sort of moving around the board quite a lot. And Jay Bento actually traded his 2027 first rounder, which I thought was interesting. He traded that for a late fourth, which he ultimately ended up selecting Fannin at tight end for. So again, in my head, is Fannin worth a first rounder for next year? In my head, no. But again, if you feel as though you're going to have a strong year and you're potentially going to be selecting at the tail end of the first, Fannin's obviously still only 21. People obviously hopeful he might be a top 5 tight end now for a long time. I just find it really, player for player, I can easily sort of guess or sort of work out if I think if it's a fair price. But I do find when it's just draft picks, it's quite difficult to sort of to weigh out.
I think there's a couple of intriguing teams in this league. Sort of going back to that point of the sweet spot in the middle ground, Marcos has kind of found it, I think. He's just got players that can compete now, but he's got future value. He's got Lamar, Genti, Saquon, Igbuka, Devonta Smith. I think Drew K17 has done similar. He's got Jaden Daniels, Chase Brown, Justin Jefferson, Zay Flowers, Tyler Warren, and then Matt Stafford. So again, I think everyone's got strong early picks here, so I expect it to be pretty competitive. But yeah, we'll just see where I am in that picture. So if we look through the first round of each of our 3 leagues that started their draft this past weekend then, and just compare who was selected where and sort of discrepancies, if you like, on certain players. So yeah, I'll read out the top 12 picks from the Midlands first, and we'll go from there. So it was Josh Allen, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Drake May, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN, Burrow, Neighbours, Lamar, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels. And then I think you wanted to highlight a couple that sort of went a bit later in the other leagues, and that was Burrow and Neighbours. So Burrow selected 2.3 and 2.8 across the other 2 UK leagues we've got, and Neighbours 2.7 and 2.10. So yeah, the Midlands kind of moved earlier for those two. Surprised by how high they went in ours, or more reflective of where they should have gone in the other 2?
I mean, Neighbours would have gone 101 if you were picking first of all. I think that's the clear reason for that. Now, I thought it was interesting. Alan, I think he's gone number 1 pretty much in all our leagues, except from Bijan Robinson went number 1 in UK2, didn't he? And Alan went second. So I think Alan, Robinson, Gibbs, May, Chase, Puka, and JSN, they're pretty much top 7 across all the leagues, aren't they? They're sort of thereabouts. Or I think Puka might have dropped out 1, and JSN might have dropped out of that top 7 and 1. So they were all sort of similar. Neighbours, yeah, I was obviously delighted. I got him quite late in the second, which I was really pleased with. And that seems to be sort of our competition average where he's sort of going. I guess there's a little bit of concern on the injury return, but also just because so many quarterbacks were going off as well. It meant some players like him that weren't lock first round picks kind of did slide a little bit. Burrow, not really surprised. I probably think, I think in the Midlands, he went a bit higher than obviously all the others, and maybe surprised me a little bit that he went above the likes of Lamar and potentially Daniels and people. But at the same time, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. If he's your favorite quarterback to watch, then get him. If you're choosing a quarterback, first of all, like we were just talking about, go get the one that you love the most. So I wasn't too surprised on him, as it were. So no, yeah, it's just interesting, as you sort of say, that certainly someone like Neighbours, that is a whole round discrepancy compared to yours and the others. But again, it's like you said, it's he's your guy, he's the one you wanted. So yeah, fair play for grabbing him.
I was always going to select him. There was just no doubt.
Wherever you were.
Yeah, that was literally just the one player that I was like, no, I'm 100%. If I'm doing this, I need him on my team. So yeah,
and you're in that quite nice spot of, because you were towards the tail end of the first round, it was pretty high unlikely that he was going to go before, because again, if you were say fifth and he was still the player you wanted, then you do have to risk, is he going to be in then the second? Because the fifth probably is going to be too rich, or do you move back, or do you, that they're the things that you kind of have to constantly be considering, isn't it?
But I think the only thing that made me doubt was whether or not to take a quarterback at that point, because as you say, Burrow went before me, so he was off the board. But it was really Lamar and Jaden Daniels. Should I take one of them? And I don't know. I think it just goes back to our conversation in last week's pod about Daniels and the Commanders at the moment. Because I heard there's rumours, I don't know how strong they are or how serious they are, but just they're looking at sort of some of the vets that are still free agents, like the Diggs and the Samuels, maybe coming back. Or if they move for, or Ayuk, in fact, he's probably been longest linked with them, hasn't he? So if they were to move for someone from that list, then they'd give Daniels another weapon and you may look at their offense differently. But at that point, I was just like, I know Daniels is elite. He's injury ravaged last season, but he's top level quarterback. But that just put me off at the last minute. It was like, I don't know if I can trust how they're going to construct that offense. So that's the only reason I sort of passed over him, I think.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
UK 1 league next. And so, like I said, it was similar to begin with. It was Allen, Robinson, May, Chase, Gibbs, JSN, and then Caleb Williams, who came next ahead of Puka, Lamar, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian McCaffrey, and then CD Lamb making up the top 12. And again, there were a couple here that sort of stood out because you mentioned in our notes, Amon-Ra went 2.9 in the Midlands, McCaffrey went 2.11 in the Midlands, and then CD Lamb went 2.10 in the Midlands and 2.3 in the UK 2 league. So quite high for McCaffrey in particular, especially from a dynasty perspective, you'd say. But Amon-Ra St. Brown as well, featuring in the first round here. Your thoughts on that, how that shaped out?
Yeah, I was pleased to see that because, again, I think we sort of highlighted on the wide receiver chat that Amon, he's reliable. There's something about it that he's not as fancied as some of the other big time wide receivers, and he was the one that I expected to sort of slide like he did in most of our leagues and such. But I was pleased that actually in a couple of these that he did go pretty high. So no, I think that's completely fair enough. And again, sort of in terms of sort of a surefire lock as a wide receiver who pretty much plays every game and all the rest of it, I think that's a good pickup. McCaffrey, as you say, that does seem pretty high value. But again, if you're a 49ers fan or he's just your favorite player in the league and things like that, he probably will be in the top 5 or so of running backs this year, again, so it does make sense. And you've probably got another year or two at least of him. So that made sense. Caleb Williams went quite high in this one. I think he was either 7th overall pick, I think it was. So that was a little bit higher than I'd seen him elsewhere. I think he went in the first round in all 3 of these drafts, whilst he didn't in the ones that we started drafting last week. So obviously a little bit more fancied. He's an interesting player, a bit of a strange cat, isn't he, in terms of sort of character? And I think he's a bit Marmite, whether or not you sort of love him or hate him. But he's definitely developing and getting better. And again, is in that roster and with that coach who you can put a lot of value on. So so that was interesting to see. And then Lamb, again, I think that's sort of choose your poison, really. If you're going wide receiver or if you're going running back and stuff, I think Lamb's, again, I think both of us moved him back into our top 5 predicted for the year. So again, that kind of made sense to see him in at least one of these first rounds.
I think I feel like I need to see one more year out of Caleb before I'm comfortable with him that high. I know, because like you said, there was definite development improvement last season with Ben Johnson as well, arriving in Chicago. But yeah, I don't know. There was still just a question mark hovering over him for me, just going that high. But like I say, he's shown enough to suggest that he's going to go that direction, and on that trajectory. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but maybe just I need to see a little bit more of it.
He's still got the age profile. I don't know his exact age, actually. Let me just pull it up and see actually how old he is. 24 still. So he's still got a few years on quite a few of these other quarterbacks that have sort of been going in and around that sort of level and such. So that always plays into it as well. But maybe again, yeah, team projections and him. Yeah, I kind of agree. Again, he does some magical stuff. You know, he's certainly got the sort of highlight reels and such. And as you said, his fundamentals seem to be improving last year. But yeah, they're just yeah, something there that maybe, I don't know. I don't think he's the sort of quarterback I love. Yeah, he's not sort of, he's somewhere in between, isn't he? In terms of, you know, he's not an elite runner, but he's okay. He's not Jalen Hurts. You know, I think he's definitely got a wider throwing repertoire than Hurts does and such. But he's also not sort of a, you know, like a Herbert or Burrow where it's sort of a full, you know, command. He scrambles quite a lot. And sometimes it just looks a bit messy and things. And I'm still just not, you know, they've got good players, you know, for targets for him, but I'm not sure. I quite like my quarterback to have that, you know, elite wide receiver one or sort of elite target number one to really pick up big points and such, because then your quarterback can be a little bit less accurate and sort of still be bailed out. And I don't know if he's got that. So, yeah, interesting.
And then in the UK2 League, as you mentioned earlier, this was one of the rare ones out of the 5 where it was Bijan Robinson who went first instead of Josh Allen. Allen in second here, May third, Puka and Gibbs making up the top 5. And they were followed by Jamar Chase, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Caleb Williams again, and then Ashton Genty rounding up the top 12. And again, like we've mentioned, Amon-Ra 2.9 in the Midlands, and then Genty probably one to pick out from this list, isn't it? So he went 2.3 in the Midlands and 2.2 in UK1. But he managed to just about squeeze into the first round in this league.
Yeah, I think that's it. On that turn is pretty much where he's gone in every league and such. And I think that's where he'll go pretty much across the UK. So that made sense. Yeah, Robinson, I can't remember. I'd have to scroll back through the WhatsApp whether or not this might have been an auto selection. I've got vision of somebody kind of mocking like, oh no, you got an auto. You've been left with Bijan Robinson. How unfortunate, sort of like sarcastic, but also I've just got a feeling that might have happened, which obviously seems wild at the first pick of a draft. Might have got to know. I might have got that wrong. I might be doing someone, Ben Dicker, a disservice, but I don't know why that's floating around my head. But yeah, again, good to see it mixed up a little bit. Instead of Allen went number 1 everywhere else for us. But yeah, this one. Again, I probably of all the leagues, I think if you were to sort of write down, obviously maybe have Allen and Robinson switch them over. I think this one is probably the closest to sort of, you know, again, you might be closest to getting it right in terms of writing them down in order, I think. But yeah, as you sort of say, they're all quite similar. There's a lot of the same names and just a couple of variables.
Questioning your decision to select Drake May 3rd overall a week ago. Not questioning it, but just sort of raising, were you hesitant at all? Because that seems to be the sort of that exact spot or one behind that everyone else went for as well with him.
Yeah, he's quarterback 2, isn't he? Pretty much for everybody. So no, as I say, I think there's enough reasoning behind that. So yeah, always nice when you get a bit of validation from other people when they're picking. But definitely, again, when you're watching these other drafts going on and stuff, there's definitely a bit like, oh no, like why hasn't anybody else selected this person, or sort of, you know, and things like that. So it's yeah, it's always interesting to see.
Any other thoughts from these opening rounds of the draft?
Yeah, no, I think obviously UK1, we're sort of, again, at time of recording, we're sort of coming in up into the 5th round, and yeah, they have the horrid situation of a guy there who's with the 2nd overall pick being on auto, with none of us able to reach him. So that's not great, but he's getting a great roster because there's so many good players and things. So hopefully, if you're listening to us, you can log in and start making your picks. But yeah, 4 quarterbacks in the 1st, 4 in the 2nd, and 5 in the 3rd. So that's sort of as we expected. Loads of trades going on in this one. I think Mulligan Mag started off by moving up for the 5th overall pick, where he selected Gibbs. He sent a 3rd, a 10th, and his 2027 1st to get him in a deal joy with Killjoy. So that was quite an interesting and sort of ballsy movie. Obviously, really wanted Gibbs. Bryce, who also known as Gerald for some weird reason when he signed up for the, I don't know why he put his name down as Gerald, but either does he. But he moved. He had a huge trade with the Carolina Housecats. I think there was 6 picks for 5. With the headline being he moved back from 103 to 111. Too many picks for me to figure out who the winner of that trade would be. But then All Stats also got the 108 from Dingerling in exchange for 207 and 406. So that turned out to be Puka. And then Dingerling got Neighbours and Pickens. So I don't know if there's an early, if you have an early verdict on who potentially won that trade. So Puka for Neighbours and Pickens.
Anyone who gets Neighbours wins it.
I was going to say, probably stupid to ask you. So, but yeah, good to see that action. And then UK2, they were sort of coming into the sort of 9th round again, so it's a little bit quicker. They're a bit calmer on the trades at the top end of the board, but Elliot and Oaksey got things moving by sort of trading their 4ths and 5ths. And I think Oaksey then moved to 6th and 7ths with King Ollie. So there were sort of moves going on, but they were a little bit more just to maybe jump up 1 or 2 spots and sort of, move back 1 or 2 spots. So really sort of fair trades, but obviously, the selector not quite fancying somebody who was there, or somebody wanted to get up because they really wanted someone before they were sort of nabbed. So as I say, not as busy at the top end for trades, but activity happening. I know Caviar Taj and FF Down Under are all starting to get involved with some short moves as well.
So then if we have a look at the North as well, a week on from discussing them, ALW29 was quite interesting because I was looking at that and we both had the 9th overall pick and we both ended up with Neighbours and Jeremiah Love. So
okay.
Kind of mirrored each other there. So he's absolutely nailed it, in my opinion. There's a winning strategy for you.
I don't know if you mirrored or you copied. You've clearly come a week later, so I don't know if he had any mirroring code.
In my defence, I did say I wanted Genty, but he got taken from me. So yeah, it happened by accident. But Stevie Teeth's team looks interesting to me as well. A lot of top young talent there, and Lewis D92 and Hambats look to be in a good place as well. But again, any thoughts on that and any teams or picks that stood out to you from this league?
Yeah, I feel for Stevie because he's clearly got a life outside of fantasy, and I think he keeps getting people chasing him down because he's on the turn to get his picks in and stuff. But no, there's they've run out a little bit of steam. I think that they were really high energy week 1 in terms of kind of chasing people, get picks in and all the rest of it. And that's just sort of slowed down a little bit in things. But I think Garrett came off in the 4th, which was by far the highest defensive players come off any of the boards. So that was interesting. But he's such a high scorer. I think someone shared, I think he was like the top scorer in certain leagues and formats and things like that. But the top player, across the board sort of thing. So again, it's sort of one of those where when do you get involved? So he came off in the 4th, and then Hutchinson didn't go until the 8th, which was slightly obviously later moving, probably a little bit more in line with where defensive players have been coming off. There was one pick that really caught my eye, which was from Four Flushers, who selected Gunnar Helm with his 9th round pick. It was a late 9th, so 9.12. But Gunnar Helm, who's a tight end at Tennessee, and I've got to be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about him. Don't think I've ever heard his name. I don't know if Four Flushers is related to him or something, or sort of he's got inside knowledge because he follows the team. But that one really jumped off of me, and I had a quick look, and it looks as though I think he was a rookie last year. Looks as though he had quite a solid year, but very much sort of behind what else they've got there at tight end. But that was just a pick that, again, just not someone I honestly wouldn't have known he was a real person before I sort of saw. And I said 9.12. It's not so deep into the selection that you start to get these people that you aren't aware of or know very little about. It's still right in the sort of mixer and such. I'm just having a look here. He was selected just after Devontae Adams, Daniel Jones, Christian Watson. Fairly big names and things like that. So, I don't know. It's going to help someone you know anything about. Can you shed any light on that?
Absolutely not. I think I've heard his name in passing on some pods. I think they've mentioned him as one to look out for. But I've not got any in-depth knowledge on whether or not he's going to be worthy of that pick or not. But
well, when you select him in your 9th round, we'll know who you've copied this time.
Yeah. Cheers for the help, guys. I don't know if this is real or not, but now you mentioned Miles Garrett. He scored 391 points last season in fantasy.
I think this is what I got shared in the group and stuff. And I was just like, again, I had him, and he had a few weeks where it was like 60 pointers, stuff like that, where you just like mega scores. So I knew he'd scored well, but yeah, someone posted that, and I was like, what are we doing? Like, I think someone jokingly before we got drafted was like, oh, I'm taking Garrett 101 sort of thing. So territory. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's not like a kicker. It's not someone who just fills up the roster. These people are, week winners, potentially league winners, and things for you. So I actually got Garrett in ours because I wanted Will Anderson Jr., but someone again sniped me on him. But I was very pleased to get Garrett because he's one of my favorite players in the league to watch, and obviously has huge output.
Take Miles Garrett in round 9. That's the next note made from our conversation. Thank you, everyone. Any final thoughts on across the leagues at all?
Yeah, I think there was just a few themes, I guess, for people not in our competition who may be coming up to drafts and things like that might want to sort of, maybe just a few things. So yeah, the top 12 quarterbacks went in the first 3 rounds in all of ours. Hurts was a 3rd rounder in sort of 2 of the leagues, which again I was surprised by, especially in a super flex. I thought he'd be a lot for 2nd round and such. Genty, Love, Hampton, they all went in that order in all of our leagues, bar one where Hampton was taken in front of Love. So Genty is clearly the sort of favourite out of the 3 sort of stud young running backs, as it were, which I was interested in, that no one went for Love over him or at all. Loveland seems to be the preferable pick over Warren and Fannin. He's certainly in all of our leagues. He's going before those guys. Kenneth Walker's gone high in all of our leagues. He's gone in 2nd round in 3 of them, including right at 2.1 he was selected, and I think the lowest he was selected in any of our leagues was 3.5. So again, Walker's always been sort of a hit and miss type fantasy player, but obviously people are really buying into his new role with the Chiefs, which I thought was also interesting. And then finally, the rookie wide receivers. We were sort of talking about it. It's difficult where to gauge where the rookies to put them in. So in ours, they all went in the same order in each of them, with Tate number 1, Tyson, then Lemon, then Concepcion. So Tate went, just talking about these most recent drafts, or sort of in the South and the North. So he went 4.4 in the South, and then 4.1, I believe, in the North. And then Tyson was 5.10 and 5.7. Lemon 6.4 and 7.12, and then Concepcion 8.4, 8.6. So all pretty similar picking points, other than Lemon, who went a round and a half later between the 2 leagues and such. But just interesting to kind of gauge where they're going. Obviously in a dynasty format, this is, again, I think if it was a redraft, then they'd probably all be going quite a bit lower. But interesting to see that they all came. I think that's the order that they all came off the board in as well in the real draft. I think I'm right in saying maybe Concepcion went before Lemon. I can't quite remember. So as I say, a few sort of themes sort of emerging now that we've got all 5 leagues coming up there.
I think we're quite late to the party in the Midlands, aren't we? So Tate was 6.10, Jordan Tyson 6.12, Lemon's only just gone not too long ago at 8.5, and Concepcion is still available. So it's a bit later than the rest.
So Tate went. Interesting.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to ask you on, because you're quite high on Tyler Warren, aren't you? You quite like him, but Colston Loveland's being picked ahead of him. Would you see the sort of sense in that as well? But with Warren, is that a bit of a surprise for you?
I'm surprised it's so unanimous. I think first half of last season, Warren looked, the next big thing, certainly at tight end, and things. He was brilliant, and then the Colts sort of fell off and such. And I think that's what we discussed in our tight end thing, where it's that difficult thing. And Loveland kind of went the other way, slightly slower start, slightly more crowded room, but then he, sort of really came through in the second half of the season. I think Loveland, it's like aesthetically maybe a little bit more appealing, and such to his game. Warren's probably a little bit more physical with what he does, but they're both brilliant. And I think, kind of makes sense them kind of going close together. But I was maybe a little bit surprised that no one had gone for Warren above Loveland.
And then the final one from me is, gun to your head, are you picking Genty, Love, or Hampton if you had all 3 available to you?
I think I am going Genty. I think a bit boring, but the way that they've all come out in ours. I said Love, he seemed to his stock seemed to rise as we got closer to the draft. Again, when I was listening to early sort of draft value and things like that, people were saying he's really good, but he wasn't being tiered with the very elite. Was Genty last year? He was, Robinson and Barkley. He was being muted with those guys right from the start and things. So I think Genty, probably is the one I'd still go for, and I think we'll probably come out on top between them. But difficult. Hampton I really love and such, but I think is probably just a slight tier below those guys. Potentially, obviously, Love we don't know, but in terms of I think the order that they've been going, Genty, Love, Hampton is probably the way I would have gone.
Well, having conceded, I missed out on Genty. That makes me feel a lot better. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our next segment then. We've run through the running backs, wide receivers and tight end rankings already on previous pods. So please go back and listen to those if you're interested. But we are moving on to the quarterbacks this week. We'll follow the same format as before. I'll give you the rankings from last season in 5. Then we'll share and discuss our order for this coming season. So last season's top 5, Jack. Josh Allen, Drake May, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams. I'll kick us off with the top 5 for 2026, in my opinion, at least. And it's Josh Allen keeping his crown for another year as top dog. I think long gone are the doubts and mistakes. I think he's matured into an elite quarterback, got the experience to dominate and change games. And obviously he's a threat with his arm and his legs. So he's just in clear top spot for me. And then behind him, I've gone Drake May, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. I am expecting a big bounce back year from Lamar. I thought he was very, very quiet, uncharacteristically so last season. Fresh situation and setup with the coaching staff there. And so I think if he stays healthy, that will suit him, and hopefully we'll get more from him next season. And like I say, just fingers crossed for the sake of just seeing 2 ballers on the field doing their thing. Hopefully Mahomes and Burrow stay healthy, and I think they both go really big in fantasy scoring. They're showing they're capable of it. Mahomes will be raring to go off the back of his injury. He's got Rashee Rice available to him. Travis Kelce's potentially last crack at it, and he'll be desperate to put one of his best seasons on the board. And then particularly in Burrow's case, I think he's got elite receivers, dangerous offense when it's rolling, and so I see him having a really big year. So who have you got in your top 5 and why?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we're definitely going to have a couple that are a little bit different. But yeah, Allen for me, number 1. I looked at putting somebody else in number 1, and then I was just doing it for the sake of it, really. I was like, if you ask me, heart to heart, it is Josh Allen. I think not only has he become reliable, he's shown he can do it with a clunky offense, without too many weapons. He's a one-man wrecking ball himself, and he just takes over games, doesn't he? So I think he's kind of hard to sort of try and argue anybody ahead of him, especially as the dual threat that he's got as well. I went for Jackson. I went Lamar at number 2, actually, sort of similar. He obviously missed a few games, not as many as I thought he did last year, but he just wasn't right. I don't think he was playing fit and healthy. Things were just all over the shop, weren't they, for the Ravens for a large part. But, again, he's won so many MVPs. He's been in so many MVP races. I just think, we could get him back a little bit re-energized with the changes they've made in the coaching setup and things. So, I went for him number 2. So I dropped Drake May down to number 3, who, again, I think I mentioned last week, I just see as now ever reliable sort of top 5. So, but slotted him at number 3. Jaden Daniels, I went for number 4. Again, I was a little bit hesitant just because, again, the sample size, one amazing season, one slightly broken season. But I just think the threat that he's got is going to be mega. It's probably just his weapons that I'm really sort of hesitant on, but I'm sort of banking on his talent and for him to have a full healthy year. And if so, I think he'll score with both his arm and on his legs. And then Joe Burrow, number 5, my end. Just really want that full season out of Burrow, and as you sort of say, he's got amongst the best weapons out there to aim at, and we know what he can deliver. And for a guy who doesn't score a lot of or do a lot of rushing, his air yards are just insane. So I think he'll come in at 5th.
Listening to our favourite pod earlier, Heed the Call, and it was an opinion from Sessler and it's one that I share, but I've been too scared to sort of voice because it's quite an unpopular one. But he was kind of hinting at with Josh Allen that obviously he's not bored of him, but it's almost like you've seen everything from him, so he doesn't have that same sort of appeal as such. And it's like gone down that road of Patrick Mahomes. Like when he first did it, it was like, oh my God, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's magic. Same with Josh Allen, but we've seen him do it so many times. There's almost a bit of just a tiredness to it. But I know I'm not saying he's not great. He's an amazing quarterback. But do you get that as well?
Everybody wants a new thing, don't they? You're constantly striving for something fresh and new. And it's I think that's across sport, boxing or UFC, McGregor, Anthony Joshua, you build them up and then they get to the top and everybody wants them to get knocked down. And it's same as, sort of Premier League or German league and stuff. You have these Bayern Munichs that sort of just win it year in, year out, and it just gets boring. But then you watch them and they're just elite. They're just so much better than everybody. And as much as you might want it, it's up to everybody else to get to their level. It's not up to them to lower their standards. And I do understand it with Allen. I think the Bills, they're one of those teams, again, I think if Allen was playing in LA or if he was playing in a slightly different market, I don't know. I think it would be seen more exciting and if he was in a different setup, but he's doing it in difficult conditions without the best, weapons around him and things. But I do think he's really level as a bloke. He just seems like, top tier bloke off the field. And then on it, I think he's massive. He's so built, seeing him in the snow and he's just, he's almost playing a different sport sometimes, isn't he? So I 100% get it. I think there's probably a shelf life of 2 to 3 years where people really want people to do well, and then people start wanting their demise. But I think that's sport generally.
Okay, so from 6th to 10th last season, we had Dak Prescott, Bo Nix, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and Justin Herbert. I've got Jackson Dart, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, and Dak Prescott in my 2026 list from 6th to 10th. Do you want to give me yours first, though, and run through those reasons why, and then I'll go through mine?
Yeah, so I had Caleb Williams in at 6. Again, a little bit like we spoke on earlier on his progression. I had Stafford at 7. Again, whilst he's nearing retirement, I just think whilst he's out there, he's going to be elite. He's going to score big, that offense, those weapons. So I had him at 7. I had Dak at number 8 for very similar reasons. Again, just such an elite thrower. With the offense around him to make the most of that. I had Hurts at number 9. And then I had Mahomes at number 10, who, again, Mahomes for me, I fully understand the buy-in from you in terms of going higher. And at first I did sort of have him quite a bit higher, but then just from a fantasy score point, I sort of started dropping him down, but they do have different weapons this year. And if he has a Rice, Rice is a massive factor. If he has Rice out there with him the whole time, those two are as good as any combo in the league. So that could really bump him up. But ultimately, I just had him behind these others. So Caleb Williams 6, Stafford 7, Prescott 8, Hurts 9, and Mahomes 10 for me.
All very fair and sound reasoning. I can't argue with it. So like I said, my boy Jackson Dart in 6th now. I think the Giants have moved to protect him more effectively now with Francis Mauigoa coming in. They're giving him more weapons. You've got Harbaugh, the coaching system, Matt Nagy as OC. Hopefully that's a bit of sort of consistency in a settled system that Dart can flourish in. I think we take away the concussion concerns if they do protect him better and they give him more time to either throw or scramble and run. Just that dual threat that he's got pushes him up for me. So I think that's going to be able to show how good he is long term. But bias aside, like I say, I genuinely see him emerging as a top quarterback in fantasy, and he'll only benefit when Malik Neighbours returns from injury as well. So that's why I've got him that high.
Do you feel, are you comfortable like he's the Giants quarterback for the foreseeable? It's not sort of a question mark at all whether or not he's the guy. It's very much, he's the man now.
I think he's still got some way to prove it. I wouldn't sort of anoint him just yet, but I think from what I've seen, because I think around the time we drafted him, the narrative that he was the guy that's going to sort it out for us at quarterback, there was still question marks for me whether or not he really was he the right type of player? But from what I saw last season, I think there was just a lot of positives and a lot of encouragement there for me to think, actually, he is someone that we can build around and he can be the future at quarterback. So, like I said, there's things to sort of tidy up and to not take massive hits as many as he did last season, because that's only going to shorten his career.
Scatterburn.
Yeah, exactly. Let him do the dirty work. But I think there's certain parts of his game that needs to tidy up, and I think hopefully Harbaugh will help him with that, and Matt Nagy as well. But just I think he's got the ability to run. He's got the arm strength. He's got the all-round game to flourish. So hopefully, with the experience and sort of just development, then I'm confident he is the guy. So Caleb Williams was 7th for me. So despite what I said earlier, just showed really positive signs last season after I had question marks hovering over him. So I think he should be able to build on that under the guidance of Ben Johnson. The Chargers have a disgraceful schedule, as we discussed last week, but I think a healthy Herbert will sling it, and he's got great offensive line in front of him if they can stay healthy. We saw what happens last season when they do get injured, so he'll be hoping that they can stay on the field. But yeah, just the targets around him, I think he's in a prime position to do really well. And then similar reasons that you mentioned about Dak Prescott, he's just got the luxury of finding CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens and others, and I think that will make him a heavy scorer again this coming season. So yeah, that's why I had him rounding off my top 10.
Nice.
And then finally from 11th to 15th, it was Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jackson Dart, and Jordan Love. Who have you got to round off your top 15 list, Jack?
Yeah, I've got Justin Herbert in 11th. Again, I kind of wanted him high. I really love him. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. But I just feel as though he's had so many issues with his offensive line. Again, hopefully they're fit, because if they're fit, I think it's an elite potential. But yeah, he's just had some issues, and I'm still not entirely sold on his weapons and such. So I had him at 11. Bo Nix at 12, who is a funny one, Bo Nix. I can't quite put my finger on him, really. He's one of those, he's obviously been praised. He's certainly, when they selected him, it was a little bit of a surprise, but I think he's definitely earned, and sort of shown value to be selected where he was. But just whenever I watch the Broncos, they're one of the teams, I've got to be honest, that I watch the least in the league, and probably because they just not had a very exciting offense for quite a while. Now they got Waddle, I might tune in a little bit more, but whenever I do watch it, I'm just always a little bit like meh with him. I don't know. I just don't see anything that I think is overly exciting or overly sort of groundbreaking and things. But he does score well on fantasy and showed that last year. So I had him at 12. Jared Goff at 13 because of his weapons. Trevor Lawrence at 14 for me, which felt low because of where he was drafted. Certainly in the first couple of leagues and such, where he was going really high. And I think you mentioned you've heard some reports of sort of big things expected, as it were. But yeah, that's just where I sort of feel he's grouped, really. I feel as though he's in that sort of Purdy, Mayfield, Darnold sort of area and such. But ultimately, I went for 14, probably a little bit of peer pressure just to get him in the top 15 and obviously over the others. And then I had Jackson Dart at 15 for me. Sort of echo what you sort of say in terms of the dual threat that he's got. Obviously, having Neighbors back is huge. Again, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of having a real wide receiver one, but then also having the other weapons and the extra protection. So again, if he's given the surrounding tools and things, I could definitely see him going where you had him, but I wanted to creep him in there, so I had him at 15 for me.
So for me, I've got Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, Jalen Hurts, and Jared Goff, and then Jalen Hurts, rounding off my top 15. So Purdy, he's got Mike Evans in the wide receiver room now. A healthy George Kittle will return, and can Ricky Pearsall break out? So I think there's some exciting weapons that are there for him that he can sort of carry on building off if he can stay healthy after an injury-ravaged season last year. So I think he'll put up numbers, as will Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix. I do share your sentiments on Bo Nix, to be fair. There is just something about him that's like, is he just a really steady quarterback that can do the simple things well without making mistakes, sort of thing? That kind of played on my mind a little bit with this. With Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, they just don't convince me. If AJ Brown is expected to leave, can Devonta Smith step up? How good will Mekhi Lemon be this season? And what will Hurts be like under new offensive coach Sean Mannion? So there's lots of question marks there for me. And like I said, with Jared Goff, very similar reasons for you, actually. Just the offensive weapons that he's got there. You just can't help but see that he's going to score big. You've got Laporta hopefully coming back from an injury hit season last year, but with Gibbs, Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, just a luxury of weapons for him. So I think he'll have another big season. So that was my top 15.
Yeah, and there's a group of them, isn't there? I think, like I mentioned, like Mayfield, Darnold. Yeah, I think they're so interchangeable, really. In terms of sort of which one might get into the top 15 and things. I think, yeah, it's sometimes it was a bit tricky. I was thinking probably a bit more situational rather than the individual player when I was making those calls.
Jordan Love obviously dropped out of this for me just because I think the Packers have lost a bit of offensive talent there. I'm just struggling to see him get into the conversation. CJ Stroud, we've spoken about him a couple of times on previous pods, just whether or not he's able to put things together consistently again. Tank Dell obviously still sidelined by injury, so has he got enough? And then I guess like the likes of Cam Ward, Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, I guess they all intrigued me in different ways, but again, not enough to sneak into the top 15. Were any of those names in your consideration?
Jordan Love didn't, because obviously when Malik Willis's backup comes into the first team, then again, I'm not too excited for that this year. So no, I think he's a good player. He gets the yardage, I think. But like you said, I don't know. There's something about Packers offense that I need to see it before I sort of, kind of go too heavy on him. Cam Ward was probably the one that I was deliberating over the most. Because again, I think he didn't have a spectacular year, but it was solid. Maybe like Caleb Williams didn't have a great first year, but I think because he did some really good things and then he had some really bad errors, he was sort of, I don't know, like, I think Bears is probably a bigger market potentially as well, but he was sort of highlighted more and such. Was Cam Ward kind of just went quietly about the season and things, but I think, Titans fans are pretty hopeful on him and things. So I could definitely see him going up. CJ Stroud, I still have the doubts over sort of the exact weapons he's got there, what he could do. And then Daniel Jones is an interesting one because, again, if he's on the field, he tends to score pretty well, but is he going to be on the field enough? And again, sort of, are the Colts going to be good enough? So again, probably the tail end of the top 15. I could have interchanged a couple, but I'm fairly content with the ones that I landed on.
Jones concerns me a little bit just because of the leg injuries he's had, not just this Achilles one, the latest one, but that feels like it's going to take something away from his running game, rushing. So that's probably why I probably left him out. But you're right, when he does play, he does seem to score really heavily. So hopefully he does come back and get to that same level that he showed at the beginning of last season, because that was fun, but we'll see. Okay, so moving on to notable news over the past week, and let's start in Miami with your Dolphins. Devon Achane signed a 4-year, $68 million contract extension with the Miami Dolphins. He's obviously got a big job on his hands, leading the way in this rebuild on offense. We've seen what he can do previously, and he's a very dangerous fantasy player as well. So how happy are you to see that deal get done as a Dolphins fan? And how do you think that will translate for him in fantasy moving forward? I think we all expect it to be a difficult season for Miami, to say the least, but a move that sort of signals that they'll build around him going forward.
Yeah, I was delighted. I was really excited. I think come at the end of last season and such, and when I first started kind of committing to Dolphins, he was the one piece that I really wanted. Again, Waddle I really liked as a player, but I could see the reasoning for him moving and sort of, kind of, again, he's great, but I didn't think he was someone you had to hold on. Achane was someone that I just felt you had to keep. So, 4 years, 64 mil extension, 32 mil guaranteed. It puts him right amongst the sort of highest earners, which I think is fully deserved as well. And just in every rebuild, there needs to be pillars. And he's basically the only standout offensive weapon we have now, and very much the face of the franchise. So he's been effective long enough for us to sort of really give him the keys and start building around him. So no, I was delighted, and I think from a fantasy perspective, it's brilliant news because you don't invest that much without the certainty that he's going to be a major player for a good amount of years, as it were. So as I sort of say, I'm slightly concerned on the workload that might be given to him, given his style of play and stuff, but absolutely delighted that he signed up. And for the Dolphins now, Jordan Brooks is probably the one that's now comes into play because he'll probably be wanting his contract too. And, he's been one of the best in the game in his position as well, and the style of the defense. So it'll be interesting if that's something that they look to tie up now. But, new front office for us. Glad to see the negotiations sort of not drag out too long. And nice to see them kind of, I think ultimately, it's always one of those with numbers. You hear sort of the headline numbers, but, you then listen to a few pods with some accounting geeks that can kind of really go through it and I think ultimately he sort of leveled in with sort of Kenneth Walker and things for Achane, which I think is great value, really, if you're honest, in terms of his productivity so far and hopefully the road ahead. So good start, I think, and really pleased.
Is that a consideration for you, just in terms of how big the workload they'll put on him, knowing the situation that you're in, you're rebuilding under Jeff Hafley? Is it a case of playing the system and the way that Hafley wants to, and if it means putting extra work on Achane, then doing it? Or do you think there's an element of let's not risk him with injuries and sort of derailing this whole thing before it even gets going?
I think he's going to have to do the workload. You know, we've got a couple backups that are okay, but nothing substantial where you can kind of have a real tandem, I don't think. So he's going to have to, really go out there. They've obviously, invested in the offensive line and things. So we're going to see a little bit of hopefully more protection there. The quarterback that they've brought in is good with his legs as well. So that hopefully helps a little bit and such. But what else is there, Joey? It's almost like I don't know what the other options are really. So again, hopefully it's not a long-term strategy. Hopefully it's sort of like, get us by this year, and then next year again, we obviously had so many draft picks this year. If we're picking high in the draft again next year, we can really sort of start to evolve that offense and things. So but the whole team needed shaping and improving, and this is only year one. So but I definitely think he's going to be given the work.
So we also had the schedule release over the past week. Now, I am one of those people that are like, whatever teams are playing who, where they're playing, just bring me football in September, wake me up in September and I'll be ready. I did then get sucked into the schedule release videos from all the teams, and that was fantastic. I think we spoke about it. I think the Titans won it for me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was creasing at it. It was so funny. Well worth hunting out if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely. But yeah, that was really funny. And I started to come around to the whole idea and the concept of it. And it was quite funny as well, because I was having a chat with Marcos and sort of saying about how the Giants going 0-2 to start the season, and then hitting a stretch of games that includes his Saints team. So hopefully that was where we could pick things up. But we start against the Cowboys and the Rams, so I'm not sort of too optimistic about that, but we'll see how it goes. But then Marcos was like, well, we start at the Lions and then we go to the Ravens, so we'll be dying for wins ourselves at that time. So it's like we're all in the same boat. Anything else stick out in the schedule for you, Jack? I know Dolphins starting at the Raiders and at 49ers, so it's a rough road schedule for your boys as well. But did you spot any particular things that stood out for you?
No, I think that's as you sort of say, I'm probably quite similar. I think it's one of those that you can sort of, when they weight these in terms of sort of, difficulty of schedule and things like that, I think it's predominantly done obviously on last year's performances. And obviously Ross has changed so much, and there's so much movement both on the field and off the field with coaches and everything like that. I think it's one of those that I don't buy into too much and things. Again, there's lots of chat about how easy the Pats was and things like that, and a lot of that was more down to you're getting people who've had a shorter turnaround or they've got injuries and things like that. So again, each team, you kind of got to take it as it comes and things. So I did enjoy some of the videos, and definitely the Titans one. As I say, it's one I've watched a couple of times and certainly shared with as many people as I know in the NFL sphere. So that's the one to go watch, I think, if you like that stuff.
And then in other news, Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers reached an agreement on a 1-year deal, so everyone can now finally rest easy because Big Rog has made his decision. I think I've said it before on the pod, and this whole song and dance he does every off-season over his future, keeping his team waiting, is very tiresome for me. So I guess it's more to do with the media, I guess, with the way they buy into it and sort of track it until he's decided. Like, it's a really big thing. Like, I get it, his profile and the player that he is, but for me, it's just one of those that I just want an answer and just let me know when he's decided. But what did you make of that in terms of Rodgers' ability to make an impact fantasy-wise as he continues to move towards the end of his career? And then, just the knock-on effect, I guess, in terms of how it benefits DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., rookie Jeremy Bernard. Those guys and their owners will all be keeping an eye on that. Pat Freiermuth as well. I know they drafted Drew Allard this year, so maybe they have their long-term successor. But Mason Rudolph is still there in second spot as well as backup. What do you make of that whole situation in Pittsburgh and Rodgers?
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? I think when a player has so much power, I think it did feel a bit inevitable to me that it was going to happen. And I kind of feel like it's the best thing that they could have done. But it's a difficult one because it kind of keeps them in that sort of middle ground where they've been for so long. Their roster isn't really built or set for a rebuild, is it? Because they've got so many sort of star pieces still, certainly on the defensive side of things, and people at sort of peak ages or sort of experience. So they couldn't really just tank this year. I don't think that would have been possible. But at the same time, staying at this level, potentially making the playoffs, getting knocked out the first round and things, it never allows them to potentially then go and draft the legit next sort of quarterback and stuff. So it's hard to see where that quarterback is really going to come from for them. So I do feel for them a lot. I know, again, listen to a couple pods that I think a lot of Steelers fans were unhappy that he was coming back. I think they wanted to be done with him, just because of again, I think if off the back of the season he'd immediately sort of committed to them again, I think people could have probably got on board. It wasn't like he had an awful season and things, but yeah, I think the fact it's just dragged out again and all the rest of it, and it's seemingly been his call rather than the team's, it does leave a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. So fantasy wise, again, it'll be an okay sort of spot filler every now and again. I don't think he's somebody that you're ever looking at as a week in, week out starter. As for the weapons, for Metcalf and that, I think he's probably better than what they would have gone for otherwise, or what they've got else on the roster. So that's probably a positive for those guys. But yeah, I just feel for teams sometimes, and again, it is that difficult thing where we obviously don't want to encourage tanking too much through the league and stuff, but it just shows you how difficult it is, especially if you haven't got the quarterback to sort of try and emerge either into a real contender, to sort of kind of elevate yourselves, or how hard it can be to try and find who that next quarterback could be.
Mason Rudolph still being a second choice quarterback in 2026 is crazy talk. Isn't he the one that had a fight with Myles Garrett when they started swinging helmets at each other?
Yeah, there wasn't there. Yeah.
That was like 10 years ago or something. See how that all plays out. Was there any other news this week, Jack, that caught your eye?
No, I think that was it, really. We're obviously in this slightly sort of down period, aren't we, for the first wise stuff like the fixture release videos get so much attention, and they put so much work into it, I think, just to kind of keep people interested and all the rest of it. So no, nothing else really jumped out to me unless I missed anything.
All good. So that is a wrap on this episode of the Sunday League podcast then. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll have plenty more NFL fantasy football chat coming through the off season. Like Jack said, not sure about what, because it's a bit quiet at the moment. So we'll see what we can find for you, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of fun segments to draw up. But there will be plenty more reaction and analysis next week as our drafts continue and they conclude. So we'll discuss those in more detail. As I say, there will be more news that we can cover as well. So we'll get into all of that. But in the meantime, please do give this episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it, as it will really help us grow the channel. Please subscribe. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can follow us across all social media at Sunday League NFL. And again, a quick reminder, if you are listening and you want to get involved either in our community of NFL fantasy football fans based in the UK, you can join our WhatsApp group. So please get in touch about that. Or if you want to join a future league, because we will look to expand moving forward, you can please email us at sundayleaguenfl@gmail.com. Jack, any final thoughts before we sign off then?
No, I think that's it from me. I think, if anybody here knows a Dave in Wirral, please give him a nudge to log in and turn off his auto pick so he can start selecting his own team, because he's the only guy at the moment that we haven't been able to get through to. Know there's loads of Villa fans in our competition, so I will be cheering on with you boys tomorrow night, or Wednesday night, for that victory. That'd be great if you can win that. But otherwise, just looking forward to, as I say, this meaty part of the drafts and seeing sort of who goes where and if there's any sort of wild selections or any more trades.
Up the Villa indeed, Jack. Up the Villa. As always, we hope we've helped your decision making and you've enjoyed our chat. But that is it from us for now. So thank you very much for listening to the Sunday League UK NFL podcast, and we will catch you next week.